So good afternoon, viewers. I am K.S. Madhavarao, the Professor of Statistics in NSOMASA. I am with my colleague, Professor Prashant Damale, who is also teaching along with me in NSOMASA. Today, we have a special guest. In fact, four of them from Johnson & Johnson. Basically, this team consists of the leadership from Johnson & Johnson, USA, and along with their Indian counterpart, India. So they were with us this morning, exploring the possibility of having a partnership between NSOMASA NMIMS University and Johnson & Johnson. We have moved quite a lot in their deliberations, and as an extension of that activity, so we are having the podcast recording with our distinguished guests. So I'm going to ask a few questions to our guest. So our viewership will be not only the faculty members of our university, but also a broad spectrum of faculty in Mumbai University and other institutes in India, and also our students. I hope they will be definitely benefited by the narratives that our distinguished guests are going to put out. That will definitely add value to their understanding and experience in NSOMASA.
Yeah. So, good afternoon, sir. The first question is to you, Dr. Surya Mohanty. So, as a global head of translational medicine and early development statistics, what kind of role do you need to play on daily basis?
First of all, let me thank you for inviting us here. So we have had a very pleasant day and a lot of interactions. So pretty happy with that. So as far as the question is concerned, let me back up a little bit. So I've been with Johnson & Johnson about 24 years. And this particular role, I've been playing it for the last 6-7 years. So translational medicine and early development statistics, we call it TMEDS. It's easier to remember. It has two components. One is the preclinical component, which is called discovery statistics, and the second part, which is early development statistics. So my role is leading a group of about 60 to 65 statisticians. Most of them are Ph.Ds. Across the globe. So we have sites in US, in Europe, and in Asia as well, and starting up in India. The folks who are in discovery, they are actually working everything before the drug goes into humans. That means we take about 10,000 molecules, from which we select 1 or 2 molecules, which goes through a rigorous process of in vivo and in vitro design of experiments, as well as animal testing, to ensure that the compound is fit to be given to humans. So that's the part which the discovery group does. And the early development folks in 6 of the therapeutic areas that J&J is involved in are really designing clinical trials in first-in-human experiments as well as proof-of-concept trials. So 2 different components, but they integrate the information so that the integration of the information can go to the late development so that the pivotal trials can be done for regulatory submission. My day-to-day work is in 3, I would call it in 3 steps. I have managerial responsibility. So managerial responsibility really means, these are really talented statisticians with strong leadership already there. So it is only to ensure that the leadership team is following the critical path of ensuring that we get the highest talent, ensuring that we retain those high quality individuals, and make sure that they be developed as future leaders of the department. So which indirectly involves understanding what the work is at every level, goes into review and providing comments on the statistical reports, whether it is a protocol that is written for animal study or for clinical trials, as well as how do we ensure that we have programs that can facilitate learning, research and learning for these really strong individuals that we get in the group. So it's much more on the advisory role, review role, providing comments, and making sure that I'm accessible to all the individuals that I have in the group. It's a very challenging role, but really exciting as well, because it kind of makes me interact with a lot of people on a daily basis. The days are long, but it's very enjoyable.
Thank you.
I have a question to you. Nowadays, for any kind of disease, there is a drug available in the market. So one question that comes to our mind about the process of the drug discovery, that is, how a research is initiated for a particular disease, and what is your role in that process?
It's an interesting question, because I actually don't agree with the first part of the statement. So when you say nowadays, any kind of disease, there's a drug available in the market, that's not actually true. The reason is there are a lot of, so the big ones probably there are, right? But then once you solve the big ones, you see that not all patients benefit because they have a condition which is not exactly that. So they fall into the classification of quote unquote rare disease or unmet medical need. So that becomes important, how we tackle that, because if big pharma doesn't pay attention to it, then nobody else is going to do it. So the first important thing is to ask the right question. What are the disease indications that we need to focus on? Once we have decided that this is the indication that we are going to focus on, then understanding what the mechanism of that disease is in the pathway of the human body, which peptides or which proteins we are lacking, what are the receptors that we have to focus on. And then we have a library of compounds, chemical compounds. These libraries could be of millions of molecules. And then what you do is you kind of utilize high throughput screening, where you know the properties of the molecule, you know what protein binding that it requires, you try to match them. So from millions or 10,000s of compounds, you ultimately try to get to a point where you have only 10 or 12 molecules. So that's the starting point. First of all, asking the right question, which disease we want to treat, then finding the molecules that can combine to have a potential of a new molecular entity, which can then be taken to the next step. So that's basically an important part, which is a combination of collaboration with multiple functions. It's computational biology, data science, statistics, chemists. Within chemists, you can have a dry chemist or a wet chemist. So the dry chemists are the ones who don't go to the labs, but they are actually involved in looking at the atom structure, trying to see the bonds and whether it will bind to the molecule or not, how to change the structure that it becomes more tolerable. So those are the type of things they do through computer simulation. Wet chemists take the molecule and try it out in the labs. So that's a distinction, but it's a multifunctional team which comes together to take 1 million or 100,000 molecules to at the level of 10 molecules, and then test it out through design of experiments in animals and take it to the next level. So there's a lot of statistics involved in every step of the process.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Surya Mohanty. Our next participant is Archan Bhattacharya. I request my colleague to ask him the question, please.
Hello, sir. So one question I want to ask is, you are working under the area of solid tumors. So what is this solid tumors, and what kind of research is currently going on in the area of solid tumors?
Okay. And thanks for the question. And then also thanks for inviting us. And we had a good time since morning. And also it was really good to see so many patient, so many students in the talk. So coming back to the question, so solid tumors are the tumors that are grown on different organs and body part in human body. So cancer, in a very, very, very lay language, especially solid tumor cancer, is basically there are some uncontrollable cell growth. So cell growths are always controlled in our body. It's controlled by different mechanism of the body. If it is uncontrolled, that's lot of the cases it comes out as tumor. Not all tumors are bad. There are some benign tumors, and there are some malignant tumors. So cancer is basically an uncontrollable growth in the body which is malignant. So that's about solid tumor. And then there are different body parts. So solid tumor can grow in different area. So based on the body parts on which it's growing, it is appearing, we classify the tumor or the cancer. My area, as currently for last few years, is lung. The tumors which are growing within lungs, and just to mention a little bit on top of it, it starts from lung, although, but if it is untreated, or even at a certain point, even after treatment, it grows everywhere. It spreads everywhere in the body. We call it metastasized to different body parts. So the current research that the J&J has approved a drug in certain areas in lung cancer, which is called Rybrevant. The compound is called amivantamab. So what it is trying is certain tumors with some mutation characteristics. So again, the tumors could be driven by different mutation characteristics, and if we can find out medicine to handle tumors which is driven by a mutation which is prevalent in a lot of such kind of tumor, then we are able to handle a lot of cases. So there is a specific type of lung cancer which is driven by certain mutation characteristics called EGFR mutations. So amivantamab targets those EGFR mutations, and it has mechanism to kill the cancer cell which are driven by this EGFR mutation. EGFR mutation, some of the EGFR mutation are very common in lung cancer. So that's more or less what I have been doing in this specific area of research.
Thank you.
Dr. Bhattacharya, so when I viewed your profile, it talks about Bayesian design. As an academic statistician, you are quite aware of Bayesian inference, Bayesian estimation, and Bayesian simulation. Can you please tell us what is this Bayesian design? How it is applicable in pharma industry?
What? This could be a talk. I'll try to make it short.
I know, since you are an expert in area, you can capture it.
Well, these people are even also very expert. So, in lot of more, if we try to see the usual way of analyzing clinical trial data, as I was talking in my lecture. You conduct a trial and you collect the data and you define your endpoints and analysis. You analyze the data, you make an inference based on the analysis, and you're done. Now, in that particular area, or with using that particular drug, that is not the only trial which is happening. So when we try to carry out another trial, so if we just do the trial by itself independently, then what happens to the data we have already observed? What happens to why not we use the learning from the data that we have already carried out? So that's one aspect. The other aspect is in many cases, especially in phase 2 kind of trial, you know the tolerated dose, but you want to identify your patient population in which population the drug is most effective. So you can create different cohorts at a phase 2 level and give them the drug and try to see how they are reacting, how the efficacy in each of the cohort using different patient population. And this patient population could be within one disease area, could be even different disease area, because ultimately in a lot of cancer drugs, although it is targeted for certain mutation, but the mutation could be expressed in different body parts. So if we create, let's say, 4 different cohorts using 4 different populations, we can analyze these 4 different cohorts independently, or we can try to borrow information what is happening to other cohort when we are trying to analyze other cohorts. So these are the 2 different aspects. There are different other ways of using Bayesian. And there's a main I'll just keep it to 2. These are the 2 different aspects. Where first one is we try to borrow a historic information, and second one is we try to borrow other information which is parallelly running. So when we are trying to borrow this information, we cannot really think of a frequentist way. You have to have a way to have a synchronization mechanism. And that's the place where the Bayesian idea, the Bayesian paradigm comes into the picture.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Dr. Sudhakar Rao as our next participant.
So, sir, you have provided strategic statistical input and leadership for more than 30 global regulatory approvals of drugs and biologics. So can you briefly give us an idea about the process involved in getting these regulatory approvals? So how a statistician plays a role in this process, and people from which other disciplines are involved, and what are their roles, and how do we function collaboratively?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. And again, very happy with all the hosting your institution has done. We are absolutely thrilled about everything. Coming to this question, again, everything starts with a protocol. The better the protocol that you have, the better outcomes at the end, even up to the stage of getting the drug approved. So let's say that is applicable not only for the final stages when we collect data and submit it to the regulatory agencies, it's also applicable in early development, pharmacological studies, let's say, early development already, even before that, the candidate identification is already done. Early development already has identified the right dose that is taken forward. Pharmacological studies are already done. Pharmacological studies are really what is the drug do to the body and what is the body does to the drug. So all of those are already known. Now we are at a stage we can start collecting more information on safety and efficacy, for which, again, the protocol is the basis. So for a drug approval, we have to make sure that what we are putting in a protocol is to the liking of the regulatory agencies. So is the patient population that we want to study is really where there is unmet medical need? Is the patient population is the right one? Whether we are using the right control group, is the standard of care or placebo is relevant in this particular case. Maybe there are many drugs approved in that for that particular disease setting, but then what is the best one? We have to use it as a control group. Then the statistician will have to work towards what kind of design, what is the variable we want to measure as a clinical outcome for the study. If it is cancer, maybe time to death, maybe time to progression. If it is something else, diabetes, maybe H1B, A1C values. So in oncology, it's most of the time it is time to event endpoints. So then the statistician really have to work on what are the numbers for the control group. What do we expect from our novel treatment that we are trying to get approved? What kind of difference is meaningful? How large the study has to be? What are the variability of the endpoint is like? All of those things have to be well thought out. And this is not just a statistician sitting in the back room and coming up with that. This is working hand in hand with the clinician, so the MDs, and as well as others, such as regulatory affairs group. So they are the ones who have the first line of contact with the agencies, which ultimately will grant us the approval if the drug is effective. So they have to also weigh in on whether such a design, such a approach is appropriate based on their guidance. If this is a very regulated industry, so is it appropriate for the ultimately getting the drug approved? So when all of these things are laid out very well in the protocol, then it is the data collection, data analysis, reporting of the data, making sure the appropriate statistical methodologies are used. So what we conclude is really fact-based, and it controls the type 1 error, that is false positives are low. So all of those things come in the laps of statisticians. So again, statisticians are the main drivers of all of those things, but clinicians are our equal partners in all of that. So this is the earliest, before even developing a protocol, we would approach the FDA or regulatory agencies with all of this. This is our plan. This is the patient population. This is the control. This is the endpoint, what we want to measure. This is our criteria for success. And here is the planned analysis and what you will see next. So all of those things are already discussed. So then we go on to do the study. We operationalize everything, randomize, get data. The study is finished, then we analyze the data. So then again, we go sit with the FDA to see whether this is a fileable package. So that is called a pre-NDA meeting. So that is to show to the FDA or the regulatory agencies, this is the study that we have done. This is the data that we have generated. And this is, in our opinion, is a very effective treatment. So whether it is a fileable package. So they will have their standard timelines. They will look at all of that and they will get back to us. Yes, this is, or no, this isn't, whether we need more data, all of those kinds of things. It is a very interactive process for months together. So when all the boxes are checked, so this is a safe drug, this is an effective drug, this is a stable drug, this is the drug-drug interactions, when this drug is taken with something else the patient may be taking, there is no harm. All of those things are checked. Then we will get what is called an approval. So this is a long process, starting from the protocol in the early studies to get the last piece of it to they have a lot of and we will have a lot of interactions back and forth. They may find something that is not exactly matching with what their finding is. So we have to answer all of those questions. They will do an inspection to make sure that the data quality is up to the standard. So if anything comes up, that has to be addressed. So they may say this is borderline, so we want to take it to an advisory committee, an outside committee, to weigh in on whether this is a really good treatment to be out there. So all of those things come based on the data. If the data is so good, as Archan showed, the hazard ratio is 0.49 or 0.50, then it's an easier path. If it is borderline, it's a harder path, and many times it doesn't get approved.
It's an insightful story. Insightful story.
Dr. Sudhakar Rao, all of us know that biostatistics is one of the important branch statistics. Having said that, there are lots of people of Indian origin, like Indo-Americans, who migrated to United States and did quite a lot of research in biostatistics. Some of them were in fact chairpersons of the well-known biostatistics departments all over United States. I can name, for example, P.K. Sen and Professor P.V. Rao from University of Florida. And you also know Somnath Datta.
Yeah.
So if I take up the younger crops of emerging professors in biostatistics, I can name Dr. Arvind Rao from University of Michigan. So these are the well-known people who have worked in the area of academics. Now turning on to the industry, of course, you are one of the champions who is working in the industry, biostatistician, and Girisha Raj, for example, the second name. So can you tell our readers who are the other big names of biostatisticians who are working in the pharma area, and what are the what impactful research they have done in the field of biostatistics and pharma industry?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question. So just as in the academia where Indians have excelled, as you said, many of them have occupied the chairmanship and so on and so forth. Indians have done very well in the industry setting as well. Even I can tell from our own organization, Surya and myself, we have a couple of others also in our leadership team. They're all Indians. About half of the leadership team is Indian. So it goes across the board in other pharmaceutical companies too. If you look at Eli Lilly, if you look at Novartis, if you look at many companies, a lot of the key leadership positions in statistical science, at least, is Indians. We have done extremely well. It goes back to how it all started, perhaps, because Indians were very much one of the largest contingent coming to United States, getting into statistics field. I must say that the trend has probably changed a little bit. Now, probably Chinese are more, Indians are a little bit less, but whoever is doing statistics have done really extremely well. Again, most of us spend all our time, perhaps, in drug development, not focusing too much on real research, but it is research related to developing new drugs, new methodologies. We have to think about what kind of simulations and modeling that we can do to make sure that ultimately our trials are successful. Have we consulted enough of our statistical methodologies with the experts, whether it is from academia or within the industry. So yeah, in a long story short, I think there are a lot of Indians who are making major impact in pharmaceutical industry, and it is, you can see that even in the new generation. Again, not as many as in the past. They are coming to statistics from India or Indian origin, but whoever made it, they have excelled in it. Yeah, and maybe others can add to this question.
Yeah, I think in general, what I want to say is that both in the regulatory industry as well as in the pharmaceutical, there are a lot of statisticians. So if you take, for example, FDA, which is our regulatory in US, many of the Indians have risen to high-level positions. So we interact with them for research as well as discussion, and within industry, as Sudhakar has already said. And the contribution is really designing new trials, very applied. And a lot of times it's application of the theory that has been developed by statisticians, by universities. So we also collaborate with the academics to make the applications easily accessible to the new generation of statisticians.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sudhakar and Dr. Bhattacharya. I'm Mohanty. The last participant in this podcast is Gargi Paigaonkar.
Yeah.
Shant, I can go ahead with the questions.
Yes. So, Gargi ma'am, so what happens when we look at pharma industry from a statistician's point of view? There are naturally two roles in it, one as a statistician and another as a programmer. So when we look at the programmer role in the pharma industry, so how does statistician play a better role as compared to any other graduates in terms of programming? Because when we say programming, it comes to our mind it is of computer science. But how the statisticians play a better role in this case?
Okay. So I'm one example who is a statistician and got into a programming role. So the thought process around this when it started was because what Sudhakar explained in detail about the analysis part of it, and it started with the protocol and how the whole design and everything is put over there. Now, when this data comes out, a programmer's job is to ensure that this vision that was put in the protocol and the analysis part that was discussed over there, we kind of make meaning out of it by working on it. Yeah. Now, if you have a statistics degree, to understand that protocol, to understand the details that have been put over there by a statistician in discussion with a clinical person helps a lot. In the earlier session in the morning today, we even heard Dr. Surya Mohanty talking about how he has also formulated courses for statistics for non-statisticians, or even understanding pharma for some other people on the job and things like that. So it has a benefit for understanding the reporting, because we are talking about graphs, we are talking about frequency tabs, we are talking about statistical models which are used on the endpoints to get. We heard in the talk about odds ratio and everything. So being a statistician and having that technical aspect of programming helps to understand this better. Yeah. Now, said that, in today's industry, we are also going to, as you rightly pointed out, to computer science. And then we use experts in the industry to come and talk about statistics to them, to help them understand the other part which they don't have exposure on. Like when I was brought in, I was taught the programming part. Yeah. And we are also exploring pharma graduates, and they also come over here with that experience, and then bit of programming. So with India as a footprint that is growing, I think there is this awareness that is growing. And that's where professors and universities are coming up with programs and internships or exposure given to these various things, where you know that this is exposure that you can get. But then what is that you need to work on? So that part has been brought in. Yeah. And that's why it becomes open. So you're not like ready for it, but then you know that you have this strong aspect and what you can build on. So I hope it answers your question.
I have a question for you. Out of 10 people joining the pharma industry who are basically biostatisticians, how many of them will lead to the programming roles subsequently? And once they end up in programming role, within the system, is there any chance to revert back to the biostatistician role?
I'll take the last one first. Yeah. So yes, you can. The reversal is possible. And we encourage that in our organizations also through various connections that when again referring back to the role that each person plays in the organization, we have our teams. We even work on development of associates, and we have discussions in terms of what their aspirations are. How can we, within the area of control that we have, what can the exposure be given to this person, and then collaborate with various functions for that. So we have various programs within our organization to cater to such things. And within that, I'm one example, again, sitting over here. I started programming, went into statistics for 3.5 years, and then I came back to programming because we were talking about a submission of a cardiovascular drug, and I was very much interested in leading that at a global level, and that's how I moved back over there. So I think this movement is feasible, and I think the key over here is to be very candid and open about it with your higher ups and ensure that you bring that and show that also when you're working. On the first part of it, I will even invite the others also over here to maybe contribute on that on account of 10, how many. So I would maybe say in India as such, because again of the footprint that you have more on programming, you see maybe majority of people going over there. The students who are really interested into statistics and pursuing it further go for higher degrees. And they don't just stop at masters. So there is not a divide between maybe being a statistician and a programmer, but there's one more thing over there where they like to go into and pursue higher degrees. So there's one more, this third population also over there. Currently in India, we are seeing the footprint, even J&J coming in over here. So we see that exposure and that thing happening over here. So we see the growth. And I think maybe in the future, I can say it will be almost same, depending upon where the aspirations are.
I just would like to add on to what that is.
I'll give a historical perspective. I think when I started pharmaceutical, I think majority of the programmers had some stat background. As time has gone by, I see it's a mixture of individuals who have interest in computer science, and as Gargi pointed out, are in between their careers, right? So they start off with programming, and they also interact with the statisticians, enjoy the things that they see statisticians do, and might go for a higher degree in statistics or go for a higher degree in computer science for that matter. But this evolution of data science is probably going to bring the two groups even closer together, because there has to be this interaction even more now. Things which were really innovative in 10 years ago now are standards. And to be more efficient, to get things done, we need to utilize the tools which can standardize more and more. And that requires programming at the highest level, utilizing our AI ML methodologies, and really look for solutions in the next level of innovation. So partnership has to be stronger, and partnership with not only stats and programming, but the same partnership with other groups like data management, who are very crucial for our organization because they are the ones who cure the data from a raw. And those standardization requires this collaboration even more. And ultimately, clinicians who we collaborate in making the inference, that requires communication. And communication means really not just the output that we give. Very nicely, Archan in today's presentation showed how graphically you can communicate complex ideas in a simple manner. And that part really is an interplay between the programmers and the statisticians to how to create those possibilities. and be optimal. So R, for example, utilizing R, Shiny, R Markdown, you can have thousands of tables and listings and graphs being depicted only in maybe one page or one snapshot with a drag down or drop down where you can identify which subsets you are interested in. So those type of thinking has to be organic. It cannot just be in the last moment, think about it. So again, just thinking about in the future, that's where data science, programming, stats, computer science, they're all going to be part of the same pool. And, it's just a matter of how we collaborate in that area. It's a longer answer, but I think that's how I see the future.
Thank you, Gargi and Dr. Mohanty. Now, before we end this podcast session, I would like to request Dr. Sudhakar to come up with the closing remarks.
Sure. Before I get to that, I think I just realized that I probably didn't touch upon the last part of the question that was asked to me. Whom do we closely work with, and what roles do they play? So I think Gargi already explained it. It's really programming, clinical programming, statistical programming, and statisticians are joined at the hip. So we have to work together, statistical statisticians and the programming statistical analysts. There is not a whole lot of difference. Maybe some of the statisticians have a higher technical background in statistics, but we do on a day-to-day basis. A lot of it we have to work together. A lot of it is common between our two functions. Statisticians can be very good programmers. Yeah. Many programmers with statistical background can be statisticians on a given situation. So our other than the clinicians and the regulatory agency, regulatory affairs folks that we work with closely, programming is one of the biggest partners for statisticians, as well as data management, just a little bit removed from programming. So statistics and statistical programming really are one and the same when it comes to delivering on our portfolio. Yeah. So coming to the closing remarks. Okay, I'll give it a try. Surya can add it too. So, but just from J&J perspective, it's been a fantastic interaction today. We really spent a lot more time than we originally planned, but it is all good. We have reserved this day for NMIMS. So we got to know a lot about the institution, the program, the students. And I think what we want to do with that in mind, I think this may be a really good place to start something beneficial for both our side, J&J side, as well as your institution. It is going to be a dialogue. It's going to be not a one-off, one-day meeting. We will continue to exchange ideas and come up with a plan where we can make this one really work for both of us. So, we are thrilled to be here. We'd like to do it again at a later day. But I think it's been all good from my perspective. Okay, go ahead.
Nothing else to add. Just very impressed, and we'll keep the collaboration alive.
Viewers, we have come to the end of the podcast broadcasting. Before we switch off the camera, so let me thank profusely each member of Team Johnson & Johnson, in particular Dr. Sudhakar, Gargi, and Dr. Kanchan Bhattacharya, and Dr. Surya Mohanty. And I would like to thank all those people who are behind this exercise, not only from our side, but also from Johnson & Johnson. And I hope viewers will enjoy this recording. Very rarely such moments come. We have the great people from the pharma sector, Johnson & Johnson, sharing their thoughts on very many aspects and issues. So, goodbye. We'll get to see you once again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was
Thank you.